What's going on, everybody? It's your man ENIR NABU. Just wanted to come at you guys with a quick video. I've told you before about the OPEC organization, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and it's basically the organization that was put in place to decide what currency is going to basically buy oil on Earth. And some of these countries happen to be enemies of the US of A for whatever reason. In the early 2000s, a lot of the countries that were involved in OPEC decided that they wanted no more to do with the dollar. Basically, people were going to have to use the euro to purchase oil from them, and they were going to use euro to purchase oil from each other. Basically, the dollar lost power. So we got into beef with some of these countries, some of them being Iraq, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, and so on and so forth. I wonder why we have beef with these countries. Is it because they don't want to use the dollar no more, and that takes the power away from what used to be the planet's #1 superpower? I'll read this quick thing that I found that was kind of relevant to what's going on today. I feel I had a conversation with my homegirl T. On December 5th, 1941, at a cabinet meeting, Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox said to President Roosevelt, "You know, Mr. President, we know where the Japanese fleet is." "Yes, I know where the Japanese fleet is," said President Roosevelt. "And you tell them what it is, Frank. Tell all the people in the cabinet." Knox became very excited with the okay from President Roosevelt to disperse this information, and he went to tell the group of where the Japanese were and where they were headed. And just as Knox was about to speak, Roosevelt interrupted, saying, "We haven't got anything like perfect information as to their apparent destination." Basically, back in the days, in the 40s, took planes a long time to get across the ocean. So the planes from Japan that were headed to Pearl Harbor had to be in the air for many days. And of course we could track back then a lot of things that we thought we couldn't due to technology that we got from the alien stuff going on that I've talked about before, our technology and where we got it. So basically, President Roosevelt knew exactly where the Japanese fleet was headed and when they left Japan and where they were going. Yada yada. All Navy reports showed the Japanese were in the Pacific water and were in a direction towards Hawaii and Pearl Harbor. Roosevelt knew this information, but one has to wonder why in the world he wouldn't want to tell his cabinet the information unless he wanted to hide something. On December 6th, the next day, at a White House dinner, Roosevelt was given the first 13 parts of a 15-part decoded Japanese diplomatic declaration of war. Basically, this declaration said this is war, in so many words, and that's why the Japanese fleet was dispatched to Pearl Harbor. Later that night, Roosevelt, along with the top advisor Harry Hopkins, Henry Stimson, George Marshall, and Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox, with aides John McCree and Frank Beatty, deliberately sat through the night waiting for the Japanese to strike Pearl Harbor. Not until the morning of December 7, 1941, 7:55 Hawaiian time, Japan deliberately and forcefully attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor, finally ending disillusioned isolationist ideas of an only European war. At that time, that's what it was. No U.S. involvement. And we needed a reason to go to war. We needed to usher in new policies that the government wanted to put in place that the American people would have never stood for. More basically, destruction of civil liberties. United States countrymen immediately ran to recruiting offices all over the country after the news of the attack on our Pearl Harbor to join the armed forces and fight against the Japanese and the evil Hitler. Beyond a doubt, Pearl Harbor was President Franklin D. Roosevelt's back door into the European World War II. Roosevelt's decisions and his actions were very much so deliberate and calculated in order to lead a victorious Allied power into World War II by provoking the Japanese over and over. And the foreknowledge of an attack on Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt, along with his top advisors and the federal government, are truly to blame for the loss of lives and American property in Pearl Harbor. December 7th, 1941 shall be a day in American history which will be remembered as a day of infamy. Fast forward, Lisa Ling, Oprah Winfrey top correspondent, field reporter, used to be on The View. Her sister is now sentenced to 12 years hard labor in a prison camp, along with her colleague Una Lee, 5-day trial was conducted in the country's highest court, apparently. It's funny how they had these reporters working on a border between South Korea and North Korea, and it happened to be the sister of Lisa Ling. And they were working for Al Gore, the big mastermind behind the global warming trend that took place. If you read any of my blogs before, you know global warming is complete and total bull. Not true. Planet was different degrees of temperatures all throughout history. Just because we started recording weather at a certain point in history doesn't mean weather didn't exist before we started recording it. Cut it out. Stop the lies. They used deceit and deliberate methods to get us into World War II. They did it again to get us into Iraq recently. And now there's other countries we're trying to go into. Didn't Iran just have an election this week that was hijacked by the guy we can't stand? Hugo Chavez is still pissed even though Bush is out of office out in Venezuela. And now they got two girls from America, cool with Al Gore and Oprah, relation-wise, trapped in North Korea, sentenced to hard labor in a prison camp. If we ever needed a reason to go into North Korea and start some shit, now would be the time, you'd think, right? They don't know about me and you. New to see. Open your eyes and you will read more and more truth if you see.